So we're going to look at how to build websites using HTML and CSS. And these videos here will be on YouTube for the benefit of everybody in the world. And the first thing we're going to look at is just like how the web works, just at a really basic level. And so you have clients, which are over on the left, and you have servers, which are over on the right. And it's called the client-server architecture because you have clients and servers. And clients make requests to servers, and servers respond to those requests. So they write responses back to the client. And so that's the basic architecture, and that of HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And so this is a pretty simple image, and most of us know this, but just remembering this image, keeping it in mind. And you could always come back and look at this video and take a screenshot of it because this video is on YouTube. But this is the start, request response cycle. And the clients are sometimes referred to as user agents. When you read about them in documentation, they're sometimes called a user agent, which is a weird phrase. But when you see user agent in documentation, we're talking about the client making a request. And typically this is through a browser, they're making the request, but there's other ways to make requests too. And then the request and the response, each request and response is broken up into 3 chunks. It's just text, which is being sent back and forth. Text, that's it, right? And so when I ask for a web page, that web page is just giving me text. And so here's the text. I right click, I choose View Page Source, and here's the text. Crazy. But my browser reads all that text and then turns it into this. And so the structure of the page is created by HTML, and the formatting is done by CSS. But what's coming over is only text, only text. And so this is the body that came over right here, that part right there. So every request and response is broken into three pieces. It's a bunch of text, and that bunch of text is broken into 3 separate pieces. One piece is the sort of initial line, and with the request we call it the request line, and with the response we call it the status line. What's the status of the request, right? Here it is. 200, I was able to find it, success. 404 is the status. I could not find it. It's not found. You made a request for something. My status line, the response is 404 not found. I couldn't find that, right? And so that's one part. And then you have the headers, and then you have the body and the payload. If you're submitting data from the client, you're submitting a form, then that's your body, that's your payload. And you have data right there. And when the server sends back a page, this is the page that came back, right? All this stuff. All the HTML and CSS and JavaScript. There is additionally, right, you can see the headers that come back if you go to the network tab and request a page. And then I'm just going to stop it and double click on one of the resources that came down. It shows me the request headers and the response headers. Okay, the request headers and the response headers. And so here's my request. It went to this authority or that domain. The method I used was get this, and the path is this, get that resource, and the scheme was HTTPS. And I'll accept any of this stuff, and I'll accept any of this encoding. My browser's saying, talking to the server, this is who I am and what I can accept. And then the server responds, and it sends back some headers, including that status line. And so that status line right here, the request line, status line, all this is defined in documentation. And that documentation is RFCs. And RFCs are requests for comments. And so a request for comment is put together by the IETF. And the IETF is the Internet Engineering Task Force. Now there are no internet police. Nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, you put your web page together wrong. You didn't put the right status line, request line. You don't have the right headers. You could do whatever you want. There are no internet police. However, if you want what you build to work well with what everybody else has built, right, then you adhere to the RFCs that are put out by the IETF, the request for comments. And so that's basically like the guidelines people use to coordinate their efforts to create a network where everyone can share and communicate data. Okay? So that's the IETF and the RFCs. And that's just like, interesting to know. And if you take my Go web programming class, we start to look at, you know, the request line and the status line and how each of those are broken up, and how the request line has a method which is like get or post, and it has a URI, which is what route, and then it has what version of HTTP are you using, HTTP 1.1 or HTTP 2, right? And that's how it's all set up. But that's the basics right here where we start. Client-server architecture, clients make requests and servers respond, okay? So that's just like the first deal. Now the interesting thing about this is there's different status codes. So you could type in RFC status codes, right? You now know RFC. So a takeaway from this is if you ever want to look at the horse's mouth, get it from the horse's mouth. What's the official way it's written up? You could type in RFC and status codes, and you could go here and just whatever the first link is, take a look at it. And if I look here, I have status codes. The 100s are informational. The 200s means your request was a success. The 300s mean that I'm going to redirect you somewhere else. This resource is located elsewhere now. Or we processed this and I got done processing at this location. I'm sending you to a new location to show you that I've successfully processed something. The 400 is a client error. You're not authorized to see this. It was a bad request. And the 500 is a server error, internal server error. So these are the different status codes, right? And interestingly, you know, there's been, people have added different status codes in here at different times. So one of them is right here, google.com /teapot. And status code 418, somebody put in one time as a joke. Status code 418 means I'm a teapot. And so there's a little Easter egg at Google that you could go to, google.com /teapot, and you actually get a status code of 418, right? So status code 418, status 418. The rest are success. But this one's like, I'm a teapot.
And you can tell because it's in red that there is something.
Yeah, I think that means it's not an actual, you know, that's not actually standards today. But at one point, as an April Fool joke, I think somebody put in I'm a teapot is status code 418. And another time somebody put in, Twitter used status code 420 when people were bugging them, meaning just go chill out for a bit. Status code 420. So those are status codes. And you've all seen the 404 before, and the 200 is success. And so you learned about RFCs, IETF, you know, client-server architecture, and the request response cycle that we're always doing on the web. So those are the main takeaways from the first step in learning how to create websites.